Welcome all. In this lecture, we will discuss about the second law of thermodynamics, and this discussion is from the book of Garg, Ghosh and Bansal. So we all know about the first law of thermodynamics, and this law is a statement about conservation of energy for thermodynamic process. But the problem is that it gives us no information about the way thermodynamic system evolve, as well as about the direction of flow of all natural processes. For instance, it is a common experience that heat cannot flow by itself from a colder body to a hotter body. We all know that heat flows from the hotter body to the colder body. But the point is that the first law does not rule out the possibility of the flow of heat from a colder body to the hotter body. Similarly, one can achieve complete conversion of work into heat. You see the sentence again, conversion of work into heat via dissipative processes. But the first law tells us of no definite limitations, to the contrary, that is the opposite thing. That is, it places no restriction on the extent of convertibility of heat into work. The first thing was that conversion of work into heat is possible, but the point is that the first law places no restriction on the extent of convertibility of heat into the work. So we need some law that will tell something about these possibilities, that is convertibility of heat into work. If it is possible, how much we can convert. So those things will be discussed in the context of the second law of thermodynamics. So to discuss about the second law of thermodynamics, at first we should have some concept on heat engines. We know that heat flows spontaneously from a hotter body to a colder body. Just we were discussing about this fact. If we intercept this flow with a machine, some of the heat can be converted into work. So what is heat engine? A machine that can convert heat into work is said to be a heat engine. That is the definition of heat engine. That is, the machine that can convert heat into work is said to be a heat engine. And another thing is that if heat engine operates, then it should absorb heat at a higher temperature and it will reject the heat at a lower temperature. Thus, a heat engine has to operate between two heat reservoirs. So let us look at the figure. This is the schematic of operation of a heat engine. This one is the hot reservoir and this one is the cold reservoir. This is the engine. It is taking heat from the hot reservoir Q1 and it is rejecting heat Q2 to the cold reservoir, and the work performed by the engine W is equal to Q1 minus Q2. Another thing about heat engine is that the processes which take place inside an engine must not cause permanent changes. This means that an engine has to operate in a cycle. How it operates in a cycle, that we will discuss later on, but the point is that an heat engine should operate in a cycle. The material used in the operation of an engine is called the working substance. The working substance can be solid, liquid, gas, or some paramagnetic substance. In a steam engine, working substance is steam, that is water, Other familiar working substances for automobile engines are petrol, diesel, CNG, etc. In a refrigerator, the most widely used working substance used to be chlorofluorocarbon compounds, but these are now being phased out to control ozone layer depletion in the stratosphere. So whatever it is, there is some working substance inside the engine. Now we will define an important parameter, that is efficiency of an engine. The efficiency of an engine is defined as the ratio of the net work done by it to the heat absorbed during one complete cycle, and the symbol of the efficiency is eta, and eta is equal to useful work done divided by heat absorbed. After one complete cycle, the engine returns to its original state. Therefore, there will be no change in its internal energy. Delta U is equal to 0. So, from the first law, we have delta U, that is equal to Q1 minus Q2 minus W, that is equal to 0. We know the first law is dQ is equal to du plus dW. So, from that concept, we are writing delta U is equal to Q1 minus Q2, that is dQ, minus dW, or we are writing here only the just W, that is equal to 0. So, W is equal to Q1 minus Q2. Q1 is the heat absorbed and Q2 is the amount of heat rejected. W is the work done during one complete cycle. Note that in a real engine, Q2 contributes to environmental pollution. Why? Because it is in the form of hot exhaust gases or steam, which is emitting out from the engine. That is why, as it is being exhausted in the surrounding, that is why the Q2 heat contributes to the environmental pollution or thermal pollution. Now, if we use these two equations, that is 6.1 and 6.2, you see that useful work done, work means W is equal to Q1 minus Q2, and what is heat absorbed, that is Q1. So if you use some algebraic rearrangement, then from 6.1 and 6.2 we can write eta is equal to W by Q1 is equal to Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q1 is equal to 1 minus Q2 by Q1. This result shows that eta will always be less than 1, because 1 minus Q2 by Q1, these two are positive parameters, so eta must be less than 1. Now, what is the explanation that is eta must be less than 1? Is it due to the irreversibility of thermal processes? Nevertheless, it is desirable to design an engine with maximum efficiency. To know how high eta can be, let us consider the following questions. So, what are the questions? First thing is that under what conditions should an engine operate, and does the choice of a working substance play some role? These are two basic questions. So, we will answer this question. Now, Carnot was the first researcher who recognized that for maximum efficiency, a heat engine should be thermodynamically reversible. That is, all stages of operation should be carried out infinitely slowly so that there are no dissipative losses such as friction or turbulence to waste energy. In practice, however, there are always some losses. We know that fact. The simplest reversible cycle is due to Carnot. In Carnot engine, the working substance is made to exchange heat with heat reservoirs, and we will discuss the Carnot engine in detail. However, it may be mentioned that any heat engine operating in a Carnot cycle is called a Carnot engine. So that engine which is operated in a Carnot cycle, we will call it Carnot engine. And another important fact regarding this engine is that a heat engine should be thermodynamically reversible to obtain the maximum efficiency. Now we will discuss about the Carnot cycle. The Carnot cycle consists of 4 stages. These are depicted in this figure. In this figure, these 4 stages, that is, this is the first stage, this one is the second stage, third stage, and fourth stage. It has been depicted here. And T1 and T2 is the temperatures of the hot reservoirs and cold reservoirs respectively. That is, T1 is greater than T2. And the working substance is a gas, and that is contained in a cylinder fitted with a frictionless piston. You see the term frictionless piston, as we are avoiding the dissipative losses. To simulate the working of a real engine, we consider the following reversible sequence. So the sequence is a reversible one. This is also one important fact, that this sequence is a reversible one. So first step, we place the cylinder in thermal contact with the hot reservoir and let the gas undergo reversible isothermal expansion. So the expansion is isothermal, and we have already said the processes are reversible. So the first process is isothermal expansion. You see the cylinder is in touch with the hot reservoir and it is absorbing heat Q1. As a result, the piston moves in this outward direction and the gas is being expanded. So this expansion is a isothermal expansion. Suppose Q1 heat flows from the reservoir into the gas in the process. We have indicated this change as A to B on the PV diagram. We have shown a diagram, that is PV diagram. This one is the PV diagram. This AB process is the isothermal process which is occurring in the stage 1, and Q1 is being absorbed by the cylinder. That is why we have shown Q1 in the downward direction. So process AB is the reversible isothermal process. On the TV diagram, this is represented by a straight line, and note that the process is reversible so that the temperature of the working substance is equal to the temperature of the reservoir during heat transfer. So as the cylinder is being in touch with the hot reservoir, so its temperature T1 will be fixed, and this is the process. That is, in this process temperature is not changing. That is why it is a straight line parallel to the V axis. So this is the process in TV diagram. Now the work is done by the gas on the surroundings and is given by W1 is equal to A to B integration PdV. From the first law of thermodynamics, we know that for an isothermal process W1 is equal to Q1. Since delta U is equal to 0, there is no change of internal energy for the reversible isothermal process. That is why W1 is equal to Q1. Hence, using the equation of state for n moles of an ideal gas, we can write W1 that is equal to Q1, that is again is equal to, we are writing, that is we are using the ideal gas equation, which is PV is equal to nRT. So P is equal to nRT1 by V. So nRT1 we are writing it outside of the integration. So this is integration dV by V, and lower limit is VA and upper limit is VB. So this one is nRT1 ln VB by VA. So this is what about of the work done in the stage 1 of the thermodynamic process. And VB and VA are the volumes of the gas in states B and A respectively. And next, we thermally isolate the gas and let it undergo reversible adiabatic expansion. You see the process again. This should be reversible as it was said earlier, but the expansion is now a adiabatic one. So in adiabatic process, we know that there will be no heat exchange with the surrounding. The temperature of the gas, that is working substance, falls from T1 to T2, the temperature of the cooled reservoir. This change is indicated as B to C on the PV diagram. In this process, the work is done by the gas on the surroundings and is given by W2 is equal to integration B to C P dV. Since the states B and C lie on the same adiabat, we can use the relation PV to the power gamma that is equal to K. That is, instead of the ideal gas equation which was used in stage 1, as it is a adiabatic process, so we should write PV to the power gamma is equal to constant. So PV to the power, if we use this relation, then W2 will be K VB to VC dV by V to the power gamma. So this is the amount of work done, and we can simplify this relation again. If we use the relation PV to the power gamma is equal to K again, we can further simplify this equation by again using the relation PC VC to the power gamma is equal to K is equal to PB VB to the power gamma. So equation 6.5 gives the amount of work done, and it can be shown on the figure. That is, this process, that is BC process, is reversible adiabatic one. So this one is adiabatic process, and for adiabatic process PV to the power gamma is equal to K. This equation is valid, and VB is the volume in the state B, and VC is the volume in the state C. So we have calculated the amount of work done in reversible adiabatic process. As we should note that the gas or the working substance is now at relatively low pressure, because the temperature is low, so pressure is also low. Here you see again that the figure, that initially is what it was at temperature T1, but now at state C it is in temperature 2. And here in this figure you see that that is after the expansion the temperature lowers. That is, at first it was T1 when it was in touch with T1, but now step by step the temperature is being lowered to the T1. That is, it is equal to the temperature of the cooled reservoir. So now the temperature is T1, that is the temperature is T2, that is the temperature of the cooled reservoir, and the gas is now in low pressure. To be used in a cyclic order, it has to be restored to its initial state. So our aim is to restore the initial state of the cylinder. To this effect, the gas is compressed in two stages. So to restore the previous state of the gas, what we are doing, we are compressing the gas in two stages. First isothermally and then adiabatically. Therefore, we place the cylinder in thermal contact with the cooled reservoir at lower temperature. As we were saying earlier, that is, step by step the temperature of the cylinder will be lowered, and we are keeping the cylinder in thermal contact with the low temperature reservoir T2. So that is why the gas will be ultimately compressed, and we will compress the gas at first isothermally and reversibly. Suppose Q2 heat is given up by the gas to the cold reservoir. This change is indicated as C2D. So let us look at the figure again. You see that now at the point C the temperature is T2. That is temperature of the cooled reservoir. Now what we are doing actually, we will compress the gas. Why we will compress? Because in the first two stages the gas has been expanded, but our aim is to restore its initial state. If we wish to restore its initial state, then we have to compress the gas, and we will compress the gas in two stages. The first stage is CD, that is from C to D. You see, and the volume at the point C is VC, and volume at the point D is VD. So when and this axis is the volume axis, so when we are moving from the point C to point D, so its volume will be decreased from Vc to Vd, and this process is isothermal process. You see the arrow diagram, that is AB process and CD process are isothermal process, whereas BC and DA, these processes are adiabatic process. So now we are discussing the third stage, that is when we are compressing the gas from the state C to the state D. So in this process, what is happening, that is we are compressing the gas isothermally and reversibly, and Q2 heat is given up by the gas to the cooled reservoir. So the work done will be W3 is equal to Q2 is equal to C2D PdV, and again by using the ideal gas equation, it will be nRT2 ln Vd by Vc, where Vd and Vc are the volume of the gas in states D and C respectively, and since Vd less than Vc, it signifies that W3 is negative, and that is work is done on the gas. This is very important fact, that is we are doing work on the gas. Gas is not doing any work, instead work is done on the gas, and the gas is again thermally isolated and compressed under reversible adiabatic condition till its original state is restored. That is, now it is the fourth stage. We are again compressing the gas, but now this process will be adiabatic one, and just like previous three processes, we can also calculate the work done. So the limit will be Vd to Va. So again we will use the equation for the adiabatic process, that is Pv to the power gamma is equal to constant, and just like stage 2, we will not repeat all the calculation. So just like stage 2, in stage 2 the value of the work was Nr T1 minus T2 divided by gamma minus 1. So in this case it will be Nr gamma minus 1 into T2 minus T1, that is equal to minus W2, because W2 was just opposite of that. You see the expression again, that is W2, that was in the numerator there was T1 minus T2, and here in the numerator T2 minus T1. So this value is just the opposite of the work done in stage 2. So as T2 less than T1, W4 is a negative quantity. It should be mentioned that W4 is a negative quantity, indicating that work is done on the gas during adiabatic compression. So work is done on the gas. Now Carnot cycle is a curvilinear quadrilateral on the PV diagram. The net effect of this cycle is that we have extracted heat Q1 from the source at temperature T1 and put back heat Q2 at temperature T2. And in this process, the total work done by the gas W is equal to closed integration PdV. We are using a closed integration because it is a cyclic process. That is why we are using closed integration. So that will be equal to W1 plus W2 minus W3 minus W4. And this closed integration means that the integral is taken around the cycle, and from the figure it is clear that the net work done by the engine is numerically equal to the area of the closed curve in the PV diagram. As we are using integration symbol, so definitely the area under the curve in the PV diagram, that will be the net work done by the engine. Now since we have already said that W2 is equal to minus W4, so the ultimate expression of the work after simplification becomes W is equal to W1 minus W3, and that is equal to nRT1 ln Vb by Va minus nRT2 ln Vd by Vc. We can further simplify, that is we note that the states B and C lie on the same adiabatic curve, and we can use the PV relation of the adiabatic process, that is T1 Vb to the power gamma minus 1 is equal to T2 Vc to the power gamma minus 1, because B and C lie on the same adiabatic. You see the figure again, that is this point B and point C, they lie on the same adiabatic curve. That is why we can use the TV relation. So after using the TV relation, ultimately T1 by T2, that is equal to Vc by Vb to the power gamma minus 1. And similarly, for the states D and A, again we will use the same type of adiabatic relation because D and A are on the same curve. So just like previous process, we can also show that is T1 by T2, that is equal to Vd by Va to the power gamma minus 1. Now if we compare this equation, that is 6.9 and 6.10, then we can write ultimately that is Vc by Vb to the power gamma minus 1 is equal to Vd by Va to the power gamma minus 1. So after further simplification, that is dropping the this exponents, we can write Vb by Va, that is equal to Vc by Vd. And again, if we use this result in equation 6.8 means this one, that is the when we have calculated the total work done in the cycle. So we will use this result in the equation 6.8, and that will simplify the equation 6.8, and we will have W is equal to NR T1 minus T2 ln Vb by Va. Now again we can further simplify, that is we have to combine equation 6.4 and 6.12. So what was equation 6.4? Let me show you again. Equation 6.4 was that is W1, that is equal to Q1, that is equal to nRT1 ln Vb by Va. That was equation 6.4. So after using that equation, we can write that is eta, that is equal to W by Q1, and that is equal to nRT1, this one, into that thing, that is T1 minus T2 ln Vb by Va divided by ln Vb by Va, and we have used equation 6.4 for that purpose, for the expression for the Q1. So ultimately the expression for eta becomes 1 minus T2 by T1. This is a very important result. You see that this result shows that the efficiency of a Carnot engine depends only on the temperatures of the heat reservoirs, because you see in the right hand side there is only T1 and T2, which are the temperatures of the reservoirs. The working substance plays no role at all in determining eta. So that is another important fact, that is the working substance plays no role at all in the determination of eta. In fact, it is the temperature difference T1 minus T2 that really matters. If two or more Carnot engines are working between the same high temperature reservoirs and different low temperature reservoirs, the engine working over the greater temperature difference will have the higher efficiency, because it is the temperature difference that actually matters. Usually T2 is limited to the temperature of the surroundings of the engine, that is it is the room temperature, and the efficiency depends on the temperature of the heat source. This is one of the important findings, because you see in the expression for the eta, T2 is the low temperature reservoir. But in the practical case, what temperature we will use? This temperature is the temperature of the surroundings. For example, a steam engine is running. So what will be the low temperature reservoir? It is actually the surroundings in which the heat is being transferred. So T2 is the temperature of the surroundings of the engine, that is almost 300 Kelvin, and we cannot change this limit of the low temperature reservoir. So ultimately the efficiency of a heat engine depends on the temperature of the heat source only. In a steam engine, T1 is raised by working with saturated steam at high pressures. So we can use saturated steam to increase the value of T1 in case of steam engine, and the efficiency of a typical engine is almost 45%. It means that more fuel is wasted than is utilized. This must happen. Moreover, it causes thermal as well as environmental pollution. This also means that energy has quality as well as quantity. Why quality? Because the working of a engine causes the pollution. So we say that quality is involved in a engine. And second thing is the quantity. Why we are saying quantity? Because the efficiency of a heat engine can be increased if you create higher temperature difference. So that is why we are saying the quantity is involved in a heat engine. Now this is equation 6.13, and if we use equation 6.3, so in that case we can write eta is T1 by T2 is equal to Q1 by T1. So what was equation 6.3? Let us check it again. Equation 6.3 was this one, that is expression for the eta. Expression for the eta is equal to 1 minus Q2 by Q1. As we discussed earlier in the definition of eta, we said that eta is equal to 1 minus Q2 by Q1. But in Carnot's engine, the eta is equal to 1 minus T2 by T1. So by comparing, we see T1 by T2, that is equal to Q1 by Q2. That is, for an ideal gas, the ratio Q1 by Q2 also depends on temperatures T1 and T2. Now we will discuss about this topic, that is Carnot cycle as a refrigerator. We all have heard about the term refrigerator. So one of the beautiful aspect of a Carnot engine is that we can run the whole system backward so that the sequence of events and their functions are reversed. So you have to assume that the Carnot engine is working in the reverse way. We have already shown the schematic diagram of a Carnot engine. It is absorbing heat Q1 from the hot reservoir, and Q2 amount of heat is being rejected in the cold reservoir, and the work done by the engine W is equal to Q1 minus Q2. So that was the concept of a heat engine. But if the whole system run in the backward direction so that sequence of events and their functions are reversed, thus the cycle working in the reverse direction will act as an ideal refrigerator in which heat is extracted from the reservoir at lower temperature and transferred to the reservoir at higher temperature. Therefore, in a sense, a refrigerator is also a heat engine. Now, we will examine figure 6.3. You see, if the directions of the arrows are reversed, the cycle ABCDA becomes ADCBA. So let us look at the figure again, figure 6.3. That means this figure, you see that suppose we discussed the whole process of the Carnot cycle in this way, that is AB, then BC, then CD, then DA. That means the process occurs in this direction of the arrows, that is A, B, C, D, A. Now if we reverse the direction of the arrow, that is suppose from A, D, C, B, A. Actually what we are doing, we are just reversing the direction of the process of the heat engine just described earlier. So similarly, when we are discussing about the Carnot cycle, so this cycle will also operate in the reverse way, and that will be the working concept for a refrigerator. So cycle will be in the reverse direction. and cycle ABCDA becomes ADCBA. Since each process is reversible, the cycles are also reversible. Therefore, the magnitudes of heat taken, heat rejected, and the work done remain the same except that their signs are reversed. It means that the heat Q2 is absorbed by the working substance from the lower temperature reservoir and heat Q1 is rejected to the reservoir at higher temperature. The work W represents the work done on the system. So, in a domestic refrigerator, heat is pumped out of its interior because we know that in our domestic refrigerator there is some food or edible substance inside the refrigerator. So in that case, what is done? Heat is pumped out. That means heat is taken from the food substances, and that amount of heat is pumped out of its interior, which is at a temperature lower than the surroundings, and work is done by the motor driving the refrigerator. Thermodynamically speaking, a refrigerator makes heat flow against the direction of its spontaneous flow, that is from a lower temperature to a higher temperature. So in a heat engine, heat flows from the higher temperature to the lower temperature, but in case of refrigerator, heat flows from a lower temperature to a higher temperature. So this is the figure of the cold reservoir, and the temperature of the cold reservoir is T2, and this one is the hot reservoir T1, and this one is the Carnot refrigerator. You see in the figure that the amount of heat absorbed from the cold reservoir, that is Q2, and the amount of heat rejected to the hot reservoir, that is Q1, and W amount of heat is done by the motor. Actually there is a motor in the refrigerator, so that is doing some work. As heat is being taken out from the cold reservoir, so you must have to do some work, otherwise you cannot take heat from a cold reservoir and that heat is being rejected in the hot reservoir. So there should be some motor that is doing some work W inside the refrigerator. So this is W, and Q1 is equal to W plus Q2. Now the ability of a refrigerator is rated in terms of coefficient of performance. So what is the definition of the coefficient of performance? Omega, that is equal to heat extracted at a lower temperature from the object to be refrigerated divided by the work input. So omega is equal to Q2 by W, that is equal to Q2 divided by Q1 minus Q2, that is equal to T2 divided by T1 minus T2. Note that unlike the efficiency of a heat engine, the coefficient of performance of a refrigerator can be greater than unity. That is, the amount of heat removed from the refrigerated space can be greater than the work input. Again, you should understand this fact very clearly, that unlike the efficiency of a heat engine, the coefficient of performance of a refrigerator can be greater than unity. That is, the amount of heat removed from the refrigerated space can be greater than the work input. In fact, one of the reasons for expressing the efficiency of a refrigerator by another nomenclature, that is the coefficient of performance, is the intention to avoid confusion and oddity of having thermal efficiencies greater than unity. So, to give an idea, let us consider that freezer in a refrigerator or cold storage is maintained at minus 10 degrees centigrade and the room temperature is 30 degrees centigrade. So we can readily calculate the maximum value of coefficient of performance, in this case omega. If you convert those in Kelvin scale, so it will become 263 by 40 if you use equation 6.15 and T2 divided by T1 minus T2. So that is equal to 263 by 40, that is equal to 6.58. So you must have seen a household refrigerator. In this case, the work is done by an electric motor and the working substance is Freon 12, which has a boiling point of minus 29 degree centigrade. So Freon 12 is a gas at room temperature, as it is boiling point is minus 29 degree centigrade. So Freon is a gas at room temperature. More specifically, Freon gas in a tube is made to expand suddenly from a high pressure to a low pressure. In this process, it cools as it is being expanded suddenly from a high pressure to a low pressure. This is like the process of Joule-Thomson expansion. So ultimately the gas is being cooled down and there is a vapor liquid mixture produced. This cooled fluid is circulated through an expansion coil around the region to be cooled, that is whole region of the freezer. So that region we want to cool, that liquid vapor mixture is being flown. So in that process, that mixture absorbs heat from the eatables kept inside the refrigerator, and after absorbing the heat, the entire liquid in the mixture again turns into vapor as it is absorbing heat. Now that vapor is compressed again, just like in the previous process. So it is again compressed and work is done by the compression on the vapor. So the temperature as well as pressure of the vapor rises. The compressed vapor rejects heat to the surrounding medium such as the kitchen air, and again it is condensed through a set of tubes called condenser and located at the back of the refrigerator. So it has been observed that CFC, that is chlorofluorocarbon, adversely affect the life protecting layer of ozone in our atmosphere. So there is now growing emphasis on phasing out CFCs in India. Non-CFC refrigerators are available now. In air condition, actually the working principle is almost same, but as refrigerator actually takes heat from the edibles and the air condition takes heat from the room and discharge it to the outside surroundings. So this is the difference between the air conditioner and the refrigerator. Now we will discuss about two statements regarding the second law. So the first statement is the Kelvin-Planck statement. The statement is no process is possible when sole result is complete conversion of heat into work. Again I repeat the statement, that is no process is possible whose sole result, you have to stress on the words, that is sole result. I will discuss the fact later, but the point is that no process is possible while sole result is complete conversion of heat into work. So this statement implies that one cannot devise a machine which will just absorb heat and it will produce 100% work. That is why it is saying that is no process is possible. No process is possible whose whole result is the complete conversion of heat into work. Complete conversion means 100% conversion of heat into work. That is not possible as per the Kelvin-Planck statement. However, let us consider isothermal expansion of an ideal gas. That is, when the gas expands, it does work on the piston of the cylinder, and for an ideal gas, the first law tells us that during an isothermal process, the internal energy remains constant. So, what will happen if internal energy remains constant? Then we can write the first law in this way, that is delta U, that is equal to dq minus dw is equal to 0, because delta U is equal to 0. So, dw is equal to dq. So, we have complete conversion of heat into work as per equation 6.16, that is from the first law. Now, does it violate Kelvin-Planck statement? No, it does not, because the state of the gas at the end of the process is different from that at the beginning. Why? Because due to the change in volume. So conversion of heat into work is not the sole effect. So I have told just a little bit earlier that we have to stress the words, that is sole effect. Sole effect means it is just doing 100% conversion of heat into work, and that is as a sole effect, but it is not the sole effect in this case. Why? Because there is a change in the volume. The state of the gas is not same in the beginning and at the end, so that process is not the sole effect. There is a change in the volume. So Kelvin-Planck statement has not been violated here. And there are other processes in which energy is conserved but they do not occur. For example, heat does not flow on its own from a body at a lower temperature to a body at higher temperature. In this case, energy will be conserved, but these processes do not occur. That is, spontaneous heat flow is unidirectional process. That heat always flows from the hotter body to the colder body, and it flows spontaneously. So this fact of experience is contained in the Clausius statement of the second law of thermodynamics. So what is the Clausius statement? No process is possible whose sole result is the transfer of heat from a body at a lower temperature to a body at a higher temperature. And actually this is a fact of experience and needs no proof. However, is heat flow in a refrigerator from food items kept inside to the surroundings is in violation of Clausius statement, because we have just discussed about refrigerators, and we have seen that there is a flow of heat from the colder body, that is the food items, to the surroundings, that is to a hotter body. So is there any violation of the Clausius statement? Definitely not, because some work has to be done by an external source on the working substance. We have just said that there is a motor which is inside the refrigerator and it is doing work on the working substance. So this process actually flow of heat from the colder body to the hotter body, and that is not the sole result. And here again we have to look carefully to the words, that is sole result. So it is not the sole result. So there is no violation for the Clausius statement. Now there are two statements. So note that the two statements of the second law apparently seem different or unconnected, but this is not true. They are actually equivalent, and so are their consequences. In fact, each statement implies the other, and the two are equivalent statements. If one statement is untrue, will the other necessarily be not true? Indeed it is so, and the truth of either form is both a necessary and sufficient condition for the truth of the other, and we will prove this now. So right now we will discuss about the equivalence of the Kelvin-Planck and the Clausius statement, and we will show the equivalence of these statements implies that if one statement is untrue, the other statement is necessarily untrue. So we will now discuss the fact that how it is possible. So let us suppose that the Clausius statement of the second law is violated by a hypothetical refrigerator A. So I am again saying that is, we are assuming that Clausius statement of the second law is violated by a hypothetical refrigerator A. This is a refrigerator A, and it transfers Q2 units of heat in each cycle from a cold reservoir at temperature T2 to a hot reservoir at temperature T1. You see, this is the refrigerator, so it is taking heat Q2 from the cold reservoir, and that amount of heat is being rejected at the higher temperature. So T2 is in a low temperature and T1 is at high temperature. The refrigerator A is taking heat from the cold reservoir, and that amount of heat is rejected at the high temperature in each cycle. So this process is being performed without expenditure of any work. Actually, it should not happen, but we are assuming that this is happening, and this is happening without expenditure of any type of work. Let us now assume that a heat engine working in a cycle between the same heat reservoirs draws an amount of heat Q1 from the hot reservoir and rejects heat Q2 to the low temperature reservoir and performs work W is equal to Q1 minus Q2 in one cycle. So that means there is a hot reservoir, Q1 amount of heat is being taken from the hot reservoir and Q2 amount of heat is being rejected to the cold reservoir, and work performed W, that is equal to Q1 minus Q2. So heat engine is acting between the same two temperature limits. Further, suppose that a heat engine operates at such a rate that it completes one cycle in the same period as does the refrigerator, that the rate of completion of the cycle is also same for the two engines. Then a composite engine is formed by considering the refrigerator and the heat engine to act together. So in this figure we are considering a composite engine. Composite engine means that is combining the heat engine and the refrigerator. So for this case of composite engine, what is happening, you see that the amount of heat rejected in the hot reservoir is actually Q1 minus Q2, because it is rejecting Q2 and it is taking Q1, so actually Q1 minus Q2, and the work W is equal to Q1 minus Q2. And from the cold reservoir you see that Q2 amount of heat is being rejected and here Q2 amount of heat is being taken. So actually no, ultimately if we consider the combined engine, so no heat is being taken from the cold reservoir. Now we will discuss the fact. So composite engine draws Q1 minus Q2 from the hot reservoir and converts it completely into work. If you look at the figure more carefully, so what is happening actually, that is the combined heat engine taking Q1 minus Q2 heat from the hot reservoir and it converts the whole amount of heat into the work, because here W is equal to Q1 minus Q2, so here also W should be Q1 minus Q2, and it is not taking any heat from the cold reservoir, so ultimately it is taking heat from the hot reservoir, that is Q1 minus Q2, and all the heat is being converted to the work and the amount of work is equal to the amount of heat, that is W is equal to Q1 minus Q2. So the point is that such an engine obviously violates the Kelvin-Planck statement, because as per the Kelvin-Planck statement this should not happen, that is complete conversion of heat into the work, that is not possible. So what we have assumed the violation of the Clausius statement in the beginning. In the beginning of the this proof we have assumed that the second law is violated. Say Clausius statement of the second law is violated, we have assumed. So if Clausius statement of second law is violated, then the Kelvin-Planck statement will also be violated. Now we will prove it in a different way, that is we will prove in this way, that is at first we will assume that is Kelvin-Planck statement is violated. If we show that Kelvin-Planck statement is violated, the Clausius statement is also violated. So how to show that? Let us consider a hypothetical heat engine which extracts heat Q1 from the hot reservoir, converts it completely into work and rejects no heat to the low temperature reservoir. In this figure you see that the heat engine is taking heat Q1 from the hot reservoir and the work done W is equal to Q1, that is it is completely converting the heat into work, violating the Kelvin-Planck statement, and there is no rejecting heat in the low temperature reservoir. It is not rejecting any heat to the T2. That heat engine is not rejecting any heat at the low temperature reservoir. So we have assumed that. Now suppose that the work performed by the heat engine is used to drive a refrigerator operating between reservoirs at temperatures T1 and T2. So we are assuming that there is a refrigerator, and here that W, that is W amount of heat, is being performed on the refrigerator, and the refrigerator is taking heat Q2 from the cold reservoir and it is rejecting heat W plus Q2 to the hot reservoir. So as before, we assume that the refrigerator completes one cycle in the same period as does the heat engine. You will agree that the refrigerator by itself does not violate any law, but when it is made to form a composite engine with a heat engine, we note that the net result of operation of a composite engine working as refrigerator will be to transfer heat Q2 from the low temperature reservoir to the higher temperature reservoir without any external work. So let me show you again. So if you consider that there is a composite engine, so what is happening here? Q2 amount that is going inside the refrigerator, and here Q1 amount of heat is being taken, and here W is equal to Q1 is the work done on the refrigerator. So if work input is W and here the rejecting heat is W plus Q2, so ultimately if you consider these two things, so what is happening, that is W plus Q2 minus W, so ultimately Q2 amount of heat is being rejected to the hot reservoir. You see these two facts, that is you are inputting W amount of work that is equivalent to Q1, and the work that is heat rejecting at the hot reservoir is W plus Q2. So ultimately Q2 amount of heat is being rejected inside the hot reservoir. So we know that the net result of operation of the composite engine working as refrigerator will be to transfer heat Q2 from the low temperature reservoir to the higher temperature reservoir without any external work. And the most important part is that there will be no external work done on the reservoir, because when we are taking the two engines as a composite engine, so what is happening here actually, that is it is taking some heat, that is Q2 amount of heat from the cold reservoir, and the amount of heat that is being rejected to the hot reservoir, that is Q2, and no work is done on the refrigerator. As no work is done on the refrigerator and it is that is taking heat from the cold reservoir and transferring it to the hot reservoir, so actually this obviously violates the Clausius statement of the second law. So initially we have assumed that Kelvin-Planck statement is violated, and ultimately we have shown that Clausius statement is also being violated. So the two statements are equivalent in nature. And one important thing is that we can now conclude that the second law of thermodynamics completely rules out the so-called perpetual motion of the second kind. It means that a machine cannot run continuously at the expense of the internal energy of a body, say a heat reservoir. For example, this one, that is it cannot run continuously at the expense of the internal energy of a body. As we know that complete conversion of heat into work is not possible. So the impossibility of designing a perpetual motion machine of the second kind implies that a real machine cannot make use of the total energy it absorbs. So we must have a stage beyond its working part where unutilized heat can be rejected. So this is the limitation for a machine. And another thing that should be pointed out, that we know about the ozone layer, and due to the emission of um, different types of gases from the refrigerators, that ozone layer is being depleted day by day. So we have to think about the working substance, and that should be used in the refrigerator. We have to be careful from those refrigerants. So this thing you have to take care of. And another thing is that uh, having analyzed the operation of the Carnot cycle, we can do two things. That is, we can show that no real engine can be more efficient than the Carnot engine. That is, we can prove Carnot's theorem, and we can introduce the concept of thermodynamic temperature. We will discuss those facts in some later lecture. And thank you all for listening this lecture.